Hi, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Sam, and you are joining me in Sam's Healing Podcast. I've got a great friend and a great guest today. His name is Jake. He's in a men's group with me. I've known him for several years. I trust the guy. He's become a best friend. So, Jake, thanks for coming on today, dude.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, Jake's not going to be on camera. He's not someone like me who's out in the YouTube stratosphere doing videos. He works a full-time job. He's got friends. He's got people that are out there. So he is doing us a great service to come in. So, Jake, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll jump right into it.
I am right now, my full-time job is I'm a school administrator in rural Montana. I also work on a farm with my family, so I stay pretty busy usually spring, summer. I'm also coach high school basketball in my in my other free time, so I'm usually pretty busy. So constantly. It's a fairly good gig all the way around. I enjoy it. I enjoy it thoroughly.
You're selling yourself short, but you're a pretty successful basketball coach. But we'll talk about that more later. So, Jake, you're sitting in a great situation right now. I don't want to steal your thunder, but talk about what happened with your affair. How long was it? Talk about how long it had been going on and just the mindset that you found yourself in.
My affair started around the end of 2015, and it lasted approximately around 3 years. It ended in the around the end of 2018. Um, it wasn't the best of times. I think anybody can admit that. My mindset was when I first started, my mindset was mostly I became resentful. I went through a tough time with anxiety issues. And I didn't feel that my wife was there for me. So I kind of just, I don't know if you would say, started looking for comfort or looking for ways to relieve my anxiety, but instead of being constructive and finding other way like good ways to um deal with my anxiety, I started drinking, I started going out, I started being destructive, um finding destructive behaviors, and that's what brought me to my affair. And and as it started out, and it wasn't, I didn't think it would last. And then it would kind of snowballed. And then you started putting more time and effort into your affair than your relationship. And it kind of just kept going and going and going until at the end, my anxiety was worse than it was at the beginning of it. And there was a time where I ended up in a pasture with a pistol in my head or next to my head. I was suicidal for a long time until I started seeking help. I guess you could say seeking help, because there was no self reflection at that time. There was no self awareness. There was no self care. I didn't know how to deal with it. And my family, as they were trying to be supportive, but they are also trying to, like, come on, man, come back to the table. What are you doing? You're destroying your life. You're destroying your family. What are you doing? And at that time, I was like, I didn't want to hear it.
So you're in the middle of your affair, and here comes another nuclear bomb. You find out that your wife is actually having an affair as well.
Yes, correct. So my affair had ended. My affair was over, but I was still trying to talk to my affair partner. I was still texting and talking and calling, even though it was over. Um, but me and my wife, she had kicked me out. So I was living in another place, but we were still talking. And then all of a sudden, she stopped talking to me. She stopped trying to work on it. She stopped trying to do anything. Um, but she didn't say she was having an affair until I found out. She finally told me. So this happened at the end of um her affair started in 2019. So I slowly but surely found out about it, and then I kind of went off the deep end because holy man, why would she do
Mm.
this to me? What is she doing? Why? A million different whys, a million different questions, and then I, I mean, I started lashing out. I started trying to do this. I tried to make her go to counseling. I tried to force her to do a bunch of stuff. Um, to see like I was freaking out. My mindset was already destroyed, and then this happened,
Right.
and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't. I mean, I started to panic because I didn't want to lose my family, but I never thought about all that stuff when I was doing my affair. I mean, you don't think about the other side of it when you're doing it until you get thrust into it, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna lose everything. I'm At first I started seeking out trying to seek out help for, I mean, I would say it was kind of selfish, um trying to
But
get
let me
my.
ask you something.
Go ahead.
So, man, you're sitting here, you're having an affair, and then your wife, would you call it a revenge affair or would you just call it her own affair?
I think I would call it her own affair because I'm pretty sure she would started to move on from me, even though she didn't want to tell me that per se. She didn't want to say, well, I'm done with you. But even though eventually she did say that we're done.
Right.
But she did say she wanted a divorce a few times. But she didn't go through with it. Thank the Lord. But she was trying to move on from me because I couldn't move on from my own BS, my own bullshit. I couldn't move on and just plainly end my affair and completely jump back into mine. I think my limerence was so bad. I was so caught up in my own stuff that I
Yeah.
didn't realize what I was losing.
Was it now? Here's kind of the thing, right? So I've been talking to Unfaithful and Betrayed almost 20 years. There's a point where the unfaithful kind of does their thing and they feel like, okay, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then it comes to the point where they're on the other side and they are the betrayed. And as a coach, as someone who works with couples, I would never tell someone as a betrayed, you need to go have your own affair because that'll really show them. Because two wrongs don't make a right. And oftentimes that makes things a million times worse. And oftentimes that could push couples to the brink of there's just no way that they're going to find restoration. But that is not the case with you. So you find out that your wife's having an affair. So what do you do when you find out? I mean, how are you like, oh my, this is leveling the playing field? Are you so unhealthy that you fly off the handle and you're narcissistic and you kind of go, how dare you do what I've been doing? Or what went off inside of you?
Oh yeah, no, I was more the latter. I freaked out. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you ruining our family? You're doing this just to lash out at me and do it. I like there was no self-awareness. And then me trying to strong arm her to make her end her affair at the first part of it was probably the worst thing I could have done. Um so I'll tell you, and then I just started searching for marriage counselors like immediately. Like, we need to do this. And I tried to strong arm. She did a couple. I found she had no part in it. So I forced her to talk to this one marriage therapist that tried to, well, we had like a 8-hour session trying to get her to stay in this marriage. And he basically forced her to agree that she would stay in it and all this. He forced her to do a bunch of stuff she didn't want to do
Wow.
without making it her choice. So it it made things a million times worse. It was awful for her,
Oh
but
my.
it was
Absolutely.
but it was I thought it was great because it was affirming to
Right.
everything I thought, but it was,
Right.
and I was still in the mode where I was trying to, like, I was narcissistic as hell. So I was like, "Oh, this is great. He's gonna make her stay and do all the things I want to do." Well, it really, really made things worse, and I didn't realize that until probably like 2 months later, where she was, I would say, almost checked out. She
Oh,
wouldn't hardly.
absolutely.
She didn't want anything to do with me. I'd walk in, so I'd come and visit my children, and she would go lock herself in the bedroom because she didn't want anything to do with me. She didn't want to be around me. Like, she would have an anxiety attack. Like, all this gave her. She never had problems with anxiety until all this happened, and then I'd be around her, and she would have an anxiety attack immediately. Like, I would try to do a bunch of things with her. I tried to schedule things. I tried to schedule trips, and she couldn't even be in the car with me. She hated me that much. I wouldn't say hated, but she couldn't be around me at all. And I couldn't even get this through my head at this time.
So what was the game changer? Like, I mean, for the sake of time, for the sake of the audience, I mean, what was the moment that you felt a shift? Because here we are, and betrayed males have a different journey than betrayed females. There's some nuances. There's absolutely, and you and I have talked about this for hours, Jake. We've talked about this in our men's group. There are some commonalities without question, but there are some nuances to the betrayed male that the betrayed female doesn't necessarily wrestle with, and vice versa. But for you, you're sitting here, you're having an affair. Now she's kind of changed the dynamic. What was the game changing moment that maybe, and it wasn't like that, there's a light switch, oh, everything's fixed. But I mean, there was a change in the direction, the trajectory. What was it?
I think the change came when I found somebody, like, and I obviously I changed therapists. And you had a huge hand in that. I think you realized how desperate I was, but I changed therapists around February, like 3 months later. And now, granted, my wife wouldn't come ever, which was fine, but changing therapists and working on my self awareness and reflection, my self reflection, and my self care, and being able to kind of just let go and see what happened. Like, letting go and letting my wife figure out what she wanted to do and being okay with that. If she wanted a divorce, I had to be okay with that. If she wanted to stay,
Right.
I had to be okay with that too. But being able to let go and not have any anxiety about it, and can't and not being afraid of what was going to happen, I think that was the biggest game changer, is just letting go and really letting God take care of it.
So
Because
you said February, and not to interrupt, but I want to help the audience understand. We're not talking a couple of months ago. What year, February?
it was in February of 2020, so right before COVID.
Yeah.
February 2020. So I've been at this for a while, over 3 years.
Now,
But
the thing that's impressive is that you're talking about self-care. And a lot of betrayeds, now you are a little bit different. You were unfaithful and you're a betrayed. But a lot of betrayeds would be like, hey, you need to get your stuff together. But you, because there was a different level of humility, and I've walked with you for a few years, but your self-care, and I know your therapist, and your therapist kind of kicked your ass and said, look, your self-care sucks, not because you're trying to win her back, right? But because and I'm teeing this up for you, Jake, but at the end of the day, your self-care was trash because I think in many ways you had self-abandoned yourself. You had kind of been locked in a lot of self-shame because of your own choices and then your wife's choices. Talk about how important the self-care was, because quite honestly, like it's vital. Whether you're unfaithful or betrayed, if your self-care sucks, dude, you suck in general, right?
Correct. No, 100%. I agree with that. So my self-care was probably the biggest thing to help me get through that time, even to this time. But I would, so my therapist would make me, she made it a huge priority. Number one, probably priority. I would badger my wife all day long because I was having anxiety constantly. I was worried about the future. I'd badger, I'd text her all day long until she finally, I mean, she didn't, like I said earlier, she didn't want anything to do with me. So the more I talked to her, the more she didn't want to be around me or talk. She would flip out on me just because I tried to talk to her constantly. So I would have to find ways to calm myself down. I would go for a run. I would go do things at lunchtime to get my mind off of it. She would she would find constructive ways for me to talk to my wife that would calm her down and get her to come back to the table. Things little projects that we do that where we could get maybe take a couple steps forward. And but I mean, yeah, there was times where there was a couple steps forwards and there was one step back, but mostly it was um me lifting weights or me going. I think mostly that summer it was me running. That's where I found my solstice. Was I would run and I run and I run and I'd run for hours, miles at lunchtime. I would run probably 5 or 6 miles a day. And after I'd run, then I'd have clear minds. I took care of myself, diet wise. I just made myself a priority. I worked on my childhood trauma. Um, I worked on my self awareness, my narcissistic behavior. I worked on all that stuff where I could become centered and be somebody my wife wanted to be with
How
because I
many
was.
how much weight did you lose? Let's talk about that.
Oh, that during that year I lost about 75 pounds, 80 pounds. Yes.
Dude, it's incredible because I remember being in men's group with you and just talking and just seeing the transformation. And a lot of people think that healing is linear. Like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and this is how it's going to
Yep.
go. And we both know it's more like boom, 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 boom. Like, there's no
Oh,
linear approach. It's kind of like, dude, you're in a foxhole, you're alone. You have to learn how to fight alone. And the thing I love about you, Jake, is that you are a fighter. Now, when I say we have to fight alone, what I don't mean is that we have to isolate ourselves, because you have a men's group, you have a
yep.
therapist,
Yep.
you have buddies who are around you, supporting you. So you're not just out there on your own grinding it out. Like, you've got support. But at the end of the day, this is the thing about self-care that I have learned too, because my self-care had to go through the roof over the last, 5 years, is that we have to do it alone. Nobody wakes us up
Yep.
early to go running. Nobody like takes us running. You had to get out and
Yep.
run. You're running a farm and you've not underscored I've seen pictures of the farm. It's a pretty massive farm. Nobody does that for you. You have to get up quite
Exactly.
early in a blizzard and do the work, right? So talk about it, man. Like, talk about what motivated you. Yeah, you had me and you had our men's group and you had buddies, but dude, talk about where did it come from, Jake? Because that's what so many guys who have been betrayed or even who have had affairs or both, man, are circling the drain going, dude, I'm trying to get the want to, but it hurts like hell. How did you find it?
I think the motivation was I had messed up, and yeah, my wife played a little bit of a part in it. but I was the one that messed up first, and I was the one that had to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and I had to get myself off the ground and stop acting like a victim and start changing my life because I had so many bad habits. I had to
Mm,
start and so the motivation was there, like, even if you don't save your marriage, you still have 3 children that you have to live your life for. You have to get off the ground and you got to start acting like a parent, a father, and a husband if it does come to that. But you have to start somewhere. And you can't, just like you said, you can't just say, well, I'm going to do this and this and this. It's legit baby steps, 1 foot after another, 1 day at a time, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. It all adds up, but it's the baby steps that just getting started is probably the hardest part. Getting started and then keeping yourself motivated to keep going. Just the little wins. Every day you
yeah.
find something to win. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Dude, I
I
love it.
I made it a mile today. Well, I'm going to shoot for 2 miles and so on and so forth. Or I'm going to work on this on my personality, or I'm going to work on this. I'm going to get over this. Just little goals goes a long, long way to a larger goal in the end.
Preach that, brother. The little wins, dude, man. Some days, and if you're watching or if you're listening, man, maybe you're at home, maybe you're driving, maybe you are multitasking, but we do have the power to change the narrative. And sometimes we look back and we think, well, yeah, I did this today and I did that, whatever. What would it be like if we changed the narrative and we said, you know what? Okay, I did this and this today. Little wins, because we control the narrative. And that's something that I just never, man, it took me so long to learn that. Like, that we can control the narrative, and it's not hocus pocus, it's not denial, it is not um, just toxic positivity. Now, I do believe that there's toxic
Yeah.
positivity, and Jake, you and I both have made
Yes.
fun of toxic positivity, and we've used words we probably don't want to use here. We have gone on rants on Snapchat together, and yes, two grown ass old men use
Yeah.
Snapchat to communicate back and
We did.
forth.
We did.
But it's not about toxic positivity. It's about being able to say, I control how I see myself and I control how I see my recovery. And I love the little wins. I love the baby steps. Now, you kind of glossed over this, and I know your history, but dude, you talked about your own childhood trauma. We both have similar childhood trauma, but that's a missing piece that a lot of guys, women, I would say there's a 70% greater likelihood that women will talk about their childhood trauma
Yeah.
than man, than men will. And you and I both are, I don't mind saying, I'll let the cat out of the bag. We're both childhood sexual abuse survivors. But talk about just what it meant for you to finally confront the childhood trauma that you had not confronted for so long.
I think that was probably one of the game changers of understanding why I was the way I was, or why I became the way I was. Just kind of walking through that dark valley was probably the hardest part of my life, trying to understand what happened and trying to figure out why I dealt with things a certain way, or why I shut down, or why I acted certain ways in certain situations. But through therapy, I could better understand how to deal with that issue. I mean, I'm not nowhere near where I should be, but
Sure.
now that I've had help for a couple years, 3 years, I know how to walk through that without feeling alone, or without shutting down and avoiding all issues that would bring me back to bad habits, or bring me to a place where I don't want to be anymore, or back to where I used to be. I know how to deal with it. I know how to open up about it, which was probably the hardest part, was opening up about it, and then having probably, I want a little bit of PTSD about it, flashbacks, and take you
Absolutely.
at that time. And like, holy shit, why did I mean, you can't blame yourself because you were so young. I mean, it happened. It happened, and there's nothing you could have done about it. You got taken advantage of, and that's
So
how it works.
true.
But you get the help you need, and there's some people out there that are scared to get help or are scared to talk about the trauma that they've gone through. But that's the best thing you can do, is find the right help. The right help will get you through anything, but you have to find the right help. Is there wrong help? Of course. Everybody, everybody. I mean, everybody that seeks.
we know that. Well, that's a whole nother podcast you and I could do of bad stories of people who helped us get worse, right? We'll do that next time.
Exactly. But there is the right help for everybody out there. You just have to seek it. Just have to seek it, and they'll get you through anything that you need to get through with self-reflection and self-awareness. And I mean, like I said, if you get the right help, you can make it through anything.
And I'll let the cat out of the bag. I mean, your therapist is Amanda Asproni, who is a fan and follower favorite on both my videos and podcasts. She's become even more famous. And so trying to get her in has been a challenge because the woman just works and I think she has a waiting list of almost 12 months now. So what I would say is, so listen, for the sake of time, your marriage has been restored and is still in the process of restoration. Your family is whole. You are enjoying a level of life, a level of joy that when you sat in that field with a pistol, you didn't even see coming, and you didn't even think it would be possible. But take a moment, think about where you were at, think about what you were feeling. The thing I love about you is that you're a warrior, but you're relatable, and you don't try and be anybody that you're not. You just are who you are. But think about the guy that's out there in a field. Think about the guy that's driving just hopeless. Think about the guy, the man or the woman who feels what you felt, man. Talk to him. Give him 2 minutes. Give him 1 minute of hope and encouragement, and then we'll say goodbye.
I would say that there's always hope. Like when I was in that field, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I mean, it was a while ago, but it was like it was yes. I never at that time I felt like there was no tomorrow. I felt like it was the end for me. Like it was not gonna get any better. I had lost my family, I lost my kids. I felt like it was over. Well, thinking like where I'm at today, there's always hope. Always hope. There, no matter where you're at in the situation or whatever situation you are, no matter how you feel, there is always hope. You just have to find some glimmer of it. Just always know that if you just seek out somebody to talk to, just even a little bit, somebody to listen, somebody, anybody, could be a friend, could be a relative, sister, brother, auntie, mom, dad. There's always hope, and they'll steer you. Usually you'll find somebody to steer you the right way. And I had happened to reach out to Sam, and he steered me the right direction. And Amanda helped me steer my ship and it wasn't very long. It was a short time. It took about 6-7 months, and I got to where I needed to be. So if you want the help, if you are willing to do the work, if you're willing to stay motivated, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can do whatever you need to do in a short time. And you can get back on your feet, but there's always hope. No matter where you are, you can, I mean, maybe not just set little goals,
Yeah.
step by
The little
step.
wins, dude.
Every day, wake up, set a little goal, achieve it, and go on to the next day, and so on and so forth. And the more you do that, the more you win, the better you feel. And in the end, you don't realize how those goals add up in the end. Like, make a calendar, make a journal.
Right. Dude, put it on your
Do
phone. Log away. Today I got out of bed. Today I made a phone call to a therapist. Today I met with a therapist. Right? It's incremental
exact,
goals.
stack goals and work on yourself, self-care, self-awareness. Work on all of it, even your trauma. Do the hard things. Nobody gets to where they need to be by doing all the easy things. It's going to be hard. Everything's hard. I mean, it sounds daunting, but doing the hard things will get you where you need to go.
No, you're so right, dude. And I can't thank you enough for coming in. And as we say goodbye today, my friends, listen, I do this at the end of every podcast. If you want to reach out to me, you can email me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. I answer my own email. It may take a couple of days, but I'm going to answer it myself. But on this episode's Keep Going segment, listen, you've heard from Jake today, who came to the point where it was as low as it's ever been. And I can tell you, I have had moments with my own therapist where it was as low as I ever thought I could go. But as much as I've had those moments where I just thought it's awful, then I've had these moments where, and I know Jake has too, where with the right help, the right skillful hand, and for me, because I come from faith, there was moments with God that I found myself, whether in my car, in a field, sitting by a beach, where I have felt my soul shake with healing, insight, direction, guidance, transformation. I have felt a part of me like shake with, oh my gosh, I've never seen this or felt this, or I wasn't aware of that, or I had my life changed, maybe in a moment with some insight from a therapist, or insight from God, or insight from a best friend. Or then I've had moments like Jake talked about, stacking the wins. Man, I called a trauma therapist. I told a trauma therapist about what happened to me. I experienced some form of encouragement today. I remember there was a time I told my therapist, I'll never forget this. I was thinking about